There is something strange happening in the world right now. Many reports say we are living in a loneliness epidemic. Millions of adults say they feel isolated, disconnected, alone. But your story feels different. You didn't lose people, you chose distance. You looked at your phone, saw a familiar name, and for the first time in a long time, you thought, not today. And something surprising happened. Instead of feeling empty, you felt calm. Instead of feeling guilty, you felt lighter. For many people, that moment is confusing because society tells us that cutting people off means something is wrong. But what if it doesn't? Think back for a moment. You weren't always this way. There was a time when you were the dependable one, the person who answered calls in the middle of the night, the friend who tried to solve everyone's problems, the one who always showed up. When someone needed advice, they called you. When someone was overwhelmed, they leaned on you. And most of the time, you carried it. You absorbed stress, drama, and emotions that were never really yours. But eventually something changed. One day the phone rang and you didn't answer. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of exhaustion. And something interesting happened. The world didn't collapse, nothing terrible followed. Instead, everything became quieter. And that quiet felt peaceful. From a psychological point of view, this isn't random. Your nervous system is designed to protect you. When a person experiences too much emotional pressure for too long, the brain begins to conserve energy. Instead of constantly engaging, it slowly pulls back. It becomes more selective, less reactive, more aware. This isn't weakness, it's self-protection. Because energy, attention, and emotional capacity are limited resources. And once your brain realizes those resources are being drained, it begins guarding them carefully. But here's an important question. Where did this pattern begin? For many people, the answer goes back years, sometimes all the way back to childhood. Some people grew up in environments where they had to read the room constantly. They learned to notice tone, facial expressions, tension in the air. They could sense when something was wrong before anyone said a word. When you grow up around unpredictable emotions, your brain becomes highly observant. You start detecting patterns in people's behavior very quickly. Who shows up only when they need something? Who disappears when things get difficult? Who gives kindness with hidden conditions attached? Over time, your brain collects this information like data, and eventually a quiet internal system develops, an early warning signal. A small voice that says, be careful with this person. People sometimes mistake this for being overly sensitive, but in reality, it's awareness. You've simply spent years studying human behavior without even realizing it. That's why when certain patterns repeat themselves, you no longer ignore them. You step back. Now, here's where things become important. There's a big difference between isolation and boundaries. Isolation pushes everyone away. Boundaries choose carefully. Isolation is built from fear. Boundaries are built from clarity. If stepping away from someone fills you with anxiety and regret, that may be isolation. But if distance brings relief, calm, and mental space, that's information. Your mind is telling you something, and sometimes the healthiest thing a person can do is listen. Another truth people rarely talk about is this. Being surrounded by the wrong people can be just as exhausting as being alone. Constant negativity, manipulation, and unbalanced relationships slowly drain emotional energy. So when someone finally creates distance from those patterns, they experience something new. Silence. But it's not an empty silence, it's peaceful silence. There's a word for that experience. Solitude. Loneliness is when you want connection but can't find it. Solitude is when you finally find peace in your own space. In loneliness, the silence hurts,
heals.
but in solitude, the silence heals. Your mind becomes clearer, your thoughts slow down, your environment feels calmer. You begin noticing how much energy certain relationships used to take from you. People who don't understand this change
antisocial,
might say you've become
cold.
distant, cold, or antisocial. But the truth is simpler. You just became more selective. Selective about your time, selective about your energy, selective about who gets access to your life. And that's not a negative transformation, it's maturity. Because healthy relationships are not measured by quantity, they are measured by quality. A few genuine people who respect and understand you will always be more valuable than a large circle full of chaos. So if your circle has become smaller but more genuine, you're not doing something wrong. You're refining your environment, and that takes courage. Because protecting your peace often requires difficult decisions, saying no, stepping back, and letting go of patterns that once felt normal. But in the long run, that choice creates something powerful, a life with less noise, less pressure, and far more clarity. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether something's wrong with you for choosing distance, remember this. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your time, your attention, or your emotional energy. Learning that lesson doesn't make you cold, it means you finally understand your value. Protect your peace, because once you experience real calm, you realize how rare it truly is. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe for more insights like this.